She walked on stage, trembling, and said, "I dedicate this song to my dying mother." No one expected what happened next. As the young girl sang, pouring her heart out, the camera cut to a judge who sat frozen, his eyes wide, hand over his mouth. That voice, that name. It was his daughter. The emotional moment left the crowd speechless and the internet in tears. This isn't just a performance. It's a story of love, pain, and a shocking reunion that no one saw coming. Watch to the end to witness the truth unfold. This will break your heart and heal it too.
The theater froze the moment she opened her mouth. One note. One fragile, aching note that cracked in the middle, like something too full of pain to stay smooth. That was all it took to silence the entire auditorium. Zuri stood barefoot under the hot lights, trembling in a faded dress 2 sizes too small. She didn't blink. Didn't move. Her fingers clutched the microphone like it might save her. She wasn't singing to win. She wasn't even singing for applause. She was singing to keep her mother alive. In the front row, one of the judges leaned forward slowly. Damien Lang, a world-famous producer known for breaking stars and breaking hearts. He was the kind of man who never flinched, never cried, never gave standing ovations. But now, something was happening. He stared at the girl like he'd seen a ghost. His fingers twitched. His throat tightened. Then he whispered, "What did she say her name was?" The screen behind her lit up with a single line. Zuri Amara. Age, 13. From, Kisongo village. Guardian, none. He dropped his pen. And for the first time in over a decade, he spoke a name he hadn't dared to say out loud. Marembi. Zuri's final note rang through the hall like a prayer. And then, she collapsed. That morning, Zuri woke to the sound of her mother coughing. Deep, sharp, painful coughs that didn't sound human anymore. She rolled off the floor mat and crawled to the bed made of cracked wood and a thin mattress. "Mama, stop talking," Zuri said softly, placing a cool cloth on her mother's forehead. "You're too hot again." Marembi smiled weakly. "And you're too worried again." Zuri opened her old notebook. On the inside cover was a small photo, her and Mama when she was 4, both laughing near a stream. That was the last time Mama looked strong. Next to the photo, Zuri had taped a crumpled flyer. Voice of East Africa, Youth Talent Search. Grand prize, 2 million Tanzanian shillings. She stared at it like a window. 2 million wouldn't fix everything. But it could buy medicine. Food. Even a better doctor than the village clinic with its broken thermometer and empty shelves. Zuri had never left Kisongo. Never seen a city. Never worn real shoes. But she could sing. And Mama always said her voice was a gift. A quiet one. A rare one. The kind that could make people stop and feel. Zuri packed the only dress she had into a plastic bag. Wrapped her notebook in an old scarf. Kissed her mother's forehead. "I'm going," she whispered. "Don't give up on me." The bus ride to Arusha was hot and loud. Zuri sat beside a cracked window, holding her notebook like it was sacred. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Her stomach twisted with fear. When the city came into view, her mouth dropped open. She had never seen buildings so tall. Cars honked like angry birds. People rushed past her like wind. At the stadium gate, a man in uniform looked her up and down. "Where are your parents?" "I don't have any here," she answered. He frowned. "You're alone." Zuri held out the signed audition slip from her school principal. "Please. I came to sing." He stared at her for a moment. Then stepped aside. "Go in, little sister. And make them listen." Backstage was a different world. Girls in sparkly dresses twirled. Boys in leather shoes laughed with their parents. Someone had a personal makeup artist. Another had a coach whispering vocal tips. Zuri sat in the corner. Alone. She wore an oversized yellow dress with a missing button. Her hair was tied back with a torn ribbon. Her feet were dusty from the walk between the bus stop and the stadium. One of the boys looked at her and whispered, "Who let the house girl in?" Zuri didn't answer. She opened her notebook. Read the lyrics again. Hold on, Mama. Don't let go. I'll sing you back home. Note by note. Her hands were shaking when the assistant called her name. You're next. She stood up. Walked toward the light. And stepped onto the stage. Damien Lang had seen every type of performer. Some came with money. Some came with power. All came with hopes too big for their age. But this girl? She didn't have polish. She didn't have charm. She had something else. Something sharp and silent and haunting. As she sang, Damien's mind ran wild. He couldn't look away. The curve of her lips. The tilt of her head. The way her voice cracked when she said, "Mama." It wasn't just talent. It was a memory. It was history. It was the past knocking hard on the door he thought he had sealed shut. Mirembe. She had been his first real love. A village girl with fire in her eyes and music in her soul. He had promised to return. To build her a life. But one missed letter turned into months. Then years. His music took off. The world got louder. And she became quieter. He had failed her. And now, this girl. No. This voice. It couldn't be a coincidence. Then the screen showed her name. Zuri Amara. Amara. His breath caught. His world split open. He stood. Just as she finished the song and fell. People screamed. But Damien didn't move. He whispered to himself, broken and stunned. Is she mine? She woke to the soft hum of machines. White ceiling. Soft blanket. Sharp smell of medicine. Zuri blinked, confused. A woman in blue stood beside her bed, smiling gently. You're okay now, sweetheart. You fainted on stage. You're at New Hope Medical Center. Zuri sat up quickly. My mom, Mama, where is she? The nurse held her hand. She's in the next room. One of the show's sponsors arranged for both of you to be admitted. Zuri's shoulders dropped, her eyes suddenly full. She's alive. She is. Still weak, but alive. Before Zuri could speak again, someone knocked gently and stepped into the room. It was him. The man with the eyes. The judge. He didn't wear the cold look from the panel now. His face was soft, pale. Like someone lost in thought for too long. He held a brown paper bag in one hand. Hi. I brought you something. Zuri just stared. I didn't mean to scare you, he said quietly, placing the bag on the table. It's mango juice. And some ugali. I thought you might be hungry. Silence. He glanced toward the window, then slowly sat in the chair beside her bed. I was on that panel today, but I didn't feel like a judge when I heard you sing. Zuri didn't blink. I felt like I was hearing someone I lost. Her voice cracked. Who? He swallowed hard. Your mother. Mirembe. Zuri's hands gripped the blanket. You know my mom? He nodded. Years ago. We met in Kisongo when I was working on a music project. She used to sing by the river. I fell in love with her. Zuri's throat tightened. She never mentioned you. He nodded again. She wouldn't. I didn't deserve to be remembered. She looked down, angry now. You left her. I didn't mean to. I left to get work. I sent letters. I waited. I tried to come back. But everything went quiet. And then time passed, too fast. Zuri shook her head. Do you think just showing up with juice makes up for 13 years? No, he said softly. Nothing makes up for that. But maybe the truth still matters. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, crumpled photograph. Her mother. Younger. Laughing in a sunlit garden. Standing beside him. Zuri's breath caught. That smile. That dress. That was her mother. And the man beside her. It was him. She pushed the photo away. Leave. Zuri. I said leave. He stood, eyes full but unreadable. I'll come back. Only if you want me to. She turned her face to the wall. When the door closed, she buried her face in her hands. She didn't cry. She didn't know how to feel. The next morning, Zuri sat at her mother's bedside. Marembe looked weaker than ever, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you okay, Mama? I heard about the performance, she said with a slow smile. You did it. I fainted, Zuri said. You sang. Zuri hesitated. Mama, do you know someone named Damien Lang? Marembe didn't answer. Mama? She turned her face slowly toward the window. Then whispered, he was your father. The world slowed down. The air left Zuri's lungs. You knew. I thought he forgot us. Why didn't you tell me? Marembe closed her eyes. Because some pain is easier to carry alone. Zuri sat back in the chair, stunned. She didn't know whether to scream or run. He's the judge, Mama. He saw me on stage. Marembe coughed gently. Then God has a plan. Zuri shook her head. I don't want his plan. That afternoon, a call came from the show producers. Zuri, the woman said excitedly. You've been selected for the final round. There were over 500 entries. The judges used their golden vote. You're in. Zuri gripped the phone tightly. Are you sure? Absolutely. One of the judges personally requested it. She hung up and sat on the hospital bench. She already knew which judge. And that made it worse. The studio felt colder this time. The spotlight is heavier. Zuri stood at the microphone, staring into the dark sea of cameras and wires. No makeup. No fancy dress. Just her yellow gown. The same one from her first audition. She wanted to be seen exactly as she was. The music began. Her voice broke through the silence. You left before I knew your name. You stayed in shadows, not in frames. But still I wonder, when I sing, if somewhere, your heart hears me. Damien sat just off stage, out of view. Listening. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Every word felt like forgiveness and punishment rolled together. She wasn't singing for applause this time. She was singing for truth. When the final note landed, the audience stood. Cameras flashed. The host stepped forward with tears in his eyes. But Zuri didn't smile. She whispered into the mic. This song was for the man who judged my voice, before he knew it came from his daughter. The crowd gasped. Damien stood, stunned. And Zuri walked off stage, her head held high. She sat on the cold studio steps outside the stage door, her hands still shaking, the echo of the crowd trapped somewhere deep in her chest. Everyone clapped. Everyone cheered. But Zuri didn't want applause. She wanted answers. The stars above the city were hidden by smog. She had never felt so far from home, even with the hospital just a few blocks away. The night air brushed her face like a whisper that didn't know what to say. She heard footsteps behind her. "I figured you'd be out here," said a soft voice. She turned. It was him again. No cameras. No crew. No sponsor badge on his chest. Just Damien Lang, standing with his hands in his pockets, unsure what to do next. Zuri didn't speak. He sat beside her, keeping a careful distance. "That was brave," he said. "What you said on stage." Zuri didn't look at him. "I didn't say it for you." "I know." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that isn't quite angry, but not yet calm. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded letter. "I wrote this the night before the final," he said. "I was going to give it to you after the show, but I figured you'd never take it if I offered." Zuri unfolded it. The writing was messy. Raw. Not polished like a man used to cameras. It read, "Zuri, if I could go back in time, I would have never left your mother waiting at that dusty station. I didn't know she was carrying you. I didn't even know she needed me. I thought my silence protected her. I was wrong. If music is the only way I can reach you now, I'll keep listening until your voice forgives me. Or until it tells me to walk away for good." Zuri folded it slowly. "You think words fix this?" "No," he said. "But they're all I have right now." She looked up at him finally. "Mama never hated you. She just stopped believing in promises." He closed his eyes. "I don't want to make promises," he said. "I want to earn permission. To try." Zuri stood. "You can try. But don't expect me to call you Dad. Not yet." He smiled gently. "Fair." She walked away without another word. And he didn't follow. Back at the hospital, Marembi was sitting up for the first time in days. Zuri opened the door and burst into tears the moment she saw her. "Oh, Mama. I did it. I sang. I told everyone the truth." Marembi smiled softly. "I know. The nurses let me watch from the hallway." Zuri laid her head on her mother's lap. "I was so angry. And scared. And confused." Her mother stroked her hair. "You're allowed to feel all of that. He wants to try, Mama. But I don't know if I want him to." "You don't have to decide today," Marembi whispered. "Let him carry the weight he left behind." Zuri looked up. "What if I never forgive him?" "Then he'll still try," her mother said, "because that's what real love does, it stays, even when it's not welcomed yet." The next morning, the final votes were counted. Zuri didn't even check the screen. She didn't want the trophy. She just wanted breakfast and a quiet room for Mama to rest. But the studio called anyway. "You won, Zuri." She blinked. "What?" "You won the entire competition. The country voted. It wasn't even close." Her hands trembled. "Are you sure? Your song was the most played video on East African TV last night. Your name is everywhere." She stared out the hospital window as cars passed below. Her name. Her story. Her pain. All turned into a headline. Later that day, reporters arrived outside the hospital. Photographers. Fans. Even talent agents. But Zuri stayed inside. Sitting on the floor next to her mother's bed. Braiding string into a bracelet. Humming softly. Damien didn't show up. Not that day. Not the next. He sent flowers once. But no letter. She almost asked about him. Almost. Then she told herself not to. A week later, a black SUV pulled up at Kisongo village. Children screamed and chased the tires. Old women peeked through curtains. The entire town buzzed with stories. He's here. He came. Damien stepped out of the car wearing plain clothes. No watch. No sunglasses. Just a man walking slowly toward a crumbling house with peeling paint. Mirembe was sitting in the doorway with a wooden spoon and a bowl of cassava. She looked up. And smiled. You found your way. I had help, he said. He walked toward her. Paused. Then knelt. I'm sorry, he said. You're late, she replied gently. But not lost. Mirembe handed him the spoon. Then help me cook. You can talk while you stir. Zuri watched from behind the curtain. Then stepped outside and sat beside him on the mat. He didn't say anything. She didn't either. They just shared the silence. And this time, it wasn't heavy. It was healing. A week after Damien's visit to Kisongo, word had spread like dry season fire. Children in school uniforms pointed at the road where his SUV once parked. Market women whispered behind baskets of sweet potatoes. Everyone had an opinion about him, about Zuri, the girl who sang her father into existence, and about Mirembe, who had stayed silent for 13 years. But Zuri didn't care what they said. Her mother was breathing better. Smiling again. Cooking her favorite rice and beans on good days. That was enough. Except, something still stirred inside her. Something unspoken. She hadn't told Damien to leave. But she hadn't told him to stay either. One afternoon, Zuri walked alone to the old mango tree behind the house, her notebook tucked under her arm. It was the same tree where Mama used to sing lullabies when the nights were too loud and the hunger too big. Zuri sat under the tree and flipped open to a blank page. She had no melody in her head. Just the beating of her heart. She wrote. You didn't get to hold my hand when I crossed the stream. You missed the way I danced before I knew what music meant. But you stood still when the world wanted me to fall. And maybe that's a start. She closed the notebook slowly. A wind passed through the leaves, soft and sweet. Damien didn't come back right away. He sent a voice message now and then, short, unsure ones. Tell your mom I found the mango jam she likes. Or, heard the power's out in Kisongo. Sending lanterns. Zuri didn't always reply. But she listened. One night, Mirembe handed her a package. Zuri opened it. Inside was a second notebook, exactly like hers. Only this one was filled. With songs. Not Damien's songs. Her mother's. Every page was a piece of the woman she had known but never truly understood. Zuri's fingers stopped on a half-finished verse. You said you'd come back. But the wind came first. So I raised our child on silence. And she turned it into a voice. She looked up, stunned. I wrote those during the early years, Mirembe said softly. Before I stopped waiting. Zuri's chest ached. Mama, why didn't you tell me? Because you were already carrying enough. Zuri hugged the notebook close. I want to sing this. I want the world to hear it. Mirembe smiled. Then do it, my star. Let your voice be mine. The next morning, Zuri called the studio. I want to release a song, she said. The producer's voice lit up. Zuri, the world is waiting. What's the title? She didn't hesitate. The sound of her silence. They scheduled a session the following week in Nairobi. A full orchestra. Backup vocals. Media interviews. Zuri said she would only come on one condition. Her mother comes too. The journey to Nairobi was long, but the studio was brighter than anything Zuri had ever seen. It wasn't just the lights. It was the way everyone stood when she entered. Not out of fame. But out of respect. She walked into the booth, pulled out her mother's old lyrics, added her own verses beside them, and stood in front of the mic. The conductor nodded. Recording started. And she sang. She had a voice the world never heard. So I lent her mine. She cried in corners so I could dance in lights. And now, every note you hear is her saying, I survived. From the sound booth, Damien watched in silence. His hands shook. He hadn't known the lyrics. She hadn't sent him anything. But when the bridge came, you didn't raise me. But maybe now you can walk beside me. Not as a stranger with regrets, but as a man who chose to stay. Damien turned away. Wiped his eyes. The room was still. Then one of the sound engineers whispered, that's not a song. That's a revolution. 2 days later, the song hit the airwaves. Within 24 hours, it had over 2 million streams. Radio stations across East Africa played it on repeat. News anchors called it the new national anthem for broken homes and healing hearts. Girls sent voice messages. Fathers sent letters. Some cried. Some forgave. Some picked up the phone after years of silence. Zuri had touched something deeper than talent shows or record deals. She had touched the truth. Back in Kisongo, she returned to her routine like nothing had changed. She fed chickens. Read books to mama. Braided hair for the neighbor's twins. But that night, as she walked into the house, she saw him. Damien was sitting on their small bench, under the moonlight, holding her second notebook, the one with her newest song. Zuri paused. He stood. I heard it, he said. All of it. She waited. I don't want to be a footnote in your story, he continued. I want to be a father. If you'll let me. Zuri looked at him for a long time. Then handed him a pen. You can start by writing verse 2 with me. The morning of the final press event arrived with sunlight filtering through the curtains like golden threads. Kisongo was quiet, but Zuri's house buzzed with something new, hope. Auntie Halima had arrived early to braid Zuri's hair. Marembi was already dressed in a patterned wrapper and blouse, her head tied in a soft green scarf. She still walked with care, but her eyes sparkled. Zuri stood in front of the small mirror nailed to the wall. The radio in the background announced. Today's live broadcast will feature the winner of the Voice of East Africa Youth Talent Search, Zuri Amara, performing her new hit, The Sound of Her Silence. Marembi walked over and gently rested her hands on Zuri's shoulders. You're about to face the world, she said. But don't forget, you were enough before they ever heard you. Zuri nodded. And for the first time, she felt it too. The car to Nairobi wasn't fancy, just comfortable. But this time, Damien was already waiting inside. He didn't bring papers. No label deals. No speeches. He only carried a brown leather-bound notebook and a half-eaten bag of roasted groundnuts. Zuri climbed in without hesitation. Sat beside him. Quietly. Halfway through the trip, he asked, "Can I show you something?" She nodded. He opened the notebook. On the first page was a title written in black ink. Letters I Meant to Send. Below it were pages of thoughts, stories, apologies, lyrics he had scribbled across years. Some about Marembi. Others about a baby girl he always wondered about. Some pages had smudges where water, or maybe tears, had dried. Zuri ran her fingers across one line. I missed your first laugh. I missed your first fall. But if you'll have me, I won't miss what comes next. She closed the book and didn't say anything. But she didn't hand it back. The press conference was a storm. Flashing lights. Shouted questions. Camera crews pushing in for angles. But Zuri didn't flinch. She walked straight to the stage and sat at the piano. The host whispered, "Are you sure you don't want an introduction?" She shook her head. I'll introduce myself with this. She placed her fingers gently on the keys. The lights dimmed. And she began to sing. This is for the girl who waited at the window. The mother who taught me to speak without fear. The man who came back, not to be forgiven, but to try. The room quieted. And somewhere in the middle of the song, Damien stood from the crowd. Not to speak. Not to interrupt. Just to be seen. When Zuri reached the final verse, she looked directly at him. You were the echo I didn't want to hear. But now, maybe. You're the harmony I didn't know I needed. Tears filled his eyes. And this time, he let them fall. That night, they returned to Kisongo without fanfare. No parade. No cameras. Just the three of them, mother, daughter, and the man still learning to be a father. At dinner, Marembi served pumpkin stew and made them laugh by singing a silly jingle Zuri used to hum when she was little. Afterward, Zuri sat outside with Damien under the stars. She handed him her notebook. Page 20, she said. He flipped to it. It read. Things I've learned. My voice can carry pain. Silence is not the same as peace. Forgiveness isn't one moment. It's 1,000. He looked at her. She was watching the stars. They're the same ones Mama and I looked at every night, she said. Even when it felt like no one was listening. Damien leaned back on the wooden bench. I'm listening now. She turned to him, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. I know. A month later, a small music center opened behind the old schoolhouse in Kisongo. It wasn't huge. But it had walls covered with hand-drawn lyrics from the village kids. A microphone stand made from old bicycle parts. And one sign above the door. Marembi House, where every voice matters. Zuri stood at the ribbon with a pair of scissors in her hand. Beside her was Marembi, beaming. On the other side, Damien. The crowd cheered as she cut the ribbon. Then the children rushed inside to touch the instruments, laugh, sing, play. Zuri turned to her mother. Thank you for giving me your voice. Marembi shook her head. You didn't take my voice, Zuri. You gave it back to me. Later that night, under the same mango tree, Zuri handed Damien a guitar. You ready for verse 2? She asked. He smiled. Only if you'll sing it with me. They played softly as crickets sang back up, and the wind swayed the branches above them. Zuri's voice rose with quiet power. I didn't grow in your shadow. I grew in her light. But now that you've come with open hands, maybe we can write something right. He joined her, voice cracked but real. And in that moment, under the stars, forgiveness became more than a song. It became a family.